Welcome back, everybody. Here we are for episode 4, third with all of us back. Did 3 earlier today, so we can get through these running backs quicker. But we got me back, we got Jake back, and we got Jeremy all back in the studio. So today we're going to go over part 2 of our running back rankings, go over all the RB1s we have as our consensus rankings. A lot of it was the same. I think the later guys we were a little indifferent about, but most of the top guys were about the same. But first, we're going to jump into the news. Well, first off, how have you guys been? Jake, what you been up to?
My chimney's leaking, so I had to get that fixed. And then a giant tree fell in my backyard. Nothing fun, but
yeah, that sounds like
this will be a nice little escape talking about some running backs today.
Yeah, that sounds like a great time. Jeremy, I heard you were playing. We saw you playing some Nintendo Switch bowling earlier.
Oh yeah, I just got into that yesterday. I did pretty well. A couple
What's your score looking like?
216's my high.
All right.
The form was impressive. I don't know much about bowling, but you look like you knew what you were doing.
It looked good.
You look impressive. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
An athlete in every sense of the word.
I'm all around.
All right. Well, we'll jump right into the news then. Cleveland Browns running back Kareem Hunt, the backup running back Kareem Hunt, has requested a trade from the Browns. The Browns then ended up come out to have said they declined his request and want to keep him on the roster for the season. I believe his contract is up at the end of the year. What do you guys take away from this, if anything? Jake, we'll start with you.
It'd definitely be a lot more interesting, Kareem Hunt, if he went somewhere and they just gave him the reins. If he went somewhere like Miami, where he'd be the best back in that backfield by far, I think. Another team I heard, and again, this is all just speculation, but another team I heard that would be interesting is New England. I think he would fit really, really well in that scheme. It's exciting depending on landing spot. Or he could go somewhere like the Ravens and just pull throw a big wrench into that backfield where do you go then? I mean, that would tank J.K. Dobbins' value, I think. I'm excited to see it, and honestly, it'd be nice to see Hunt get freed up because it'd mean more touches for Chubb, and then you get Dearness Johnson. That all of a sudden becomes very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Jeremy, what do you think of this Kareem Hunt news?
Yeah, that's got to be the most crowded backfield in the league, off the top of my head, at least, with Dearness Johnson as a third back, Nick Chubb, one of the best running backs in the league, Kareem Hunt. I mean, if he gets an opportunity in a spot where he can get 15, 20 touches a game, we can see him as a top 10 back like we used to see back in Kansas City.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if any team were to trade with him or trade for him, I don't think it would take much. Kareem Hunt's already 27. Although he doesn't have as much tread on his tires, or the correct saying of that term is he has less tread on his tires because the more treads means the more use. But anyway, I don't think it would take much. And being in the final year of his deal, I think it would definitely take just at least 1 or 2 day 3 picks. I could see a couple teams who should jump all over that if the Browns wanted to. But with the Deshaun Watson news of how long he'll be suspended, if it's only 6 games, I don't think it makes sense for the Browns to deal Kareem because they're going to need to rely on that run game to stay in the playoff hunt. But if Watson ends up missing the entire year, if the NFL comes out and says no, he's done for the year, I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns change their mind and end up dealing Hunt. Do you guys agree with me if it depends on the Watson situation, or do you think he's just going to stick out the year in Cleveland?
I'll say by the trade deadline, if he's still on the team, something might happen depending on, I could see him as a middle of the pack team. And if they get a decent offer, he's still not wanting to be there, they might just let him go.
Sure.
Yeah. As of right now, I don't know that the Browns have much motivation to move him. It's more of a wait and see. And if Watson, if he only gets to 6 games, I think, why would you get rid of this guy? He's a great offensive weapon. If he's suspended for the whole year, then, Kareem Hunt probably is never going to play with Deshaun Watson. And at that point, get what you can for him. But I think you're right, Stephen, about what you said about getting maybe 2 day 3 picks. You're not going to get a ton. I mean, maybe you can get a day 2 pick closer to the trade deadline if someone's desperate and a running back goes down. But I can't see Hunt holding out or anything. He doesn't have much leverage here, I don't think. So it's wait and see. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Going from one, talking about running backs, we'll jump right into our rankings. Going from 12 down to 1 today. All the RB1s. This is the interesting part. QBs is not as fun as running backs and receivers, in my opinion. But going in at number 12 on our consensus rankings is the other Cleveland Browns running back, Nick Chubb. I am not a huge fantasy Nick Chubb fan because of the latter, Kareem Hunt being there as well. If Kareem Hunt were to leave, I think both their values would skyrocket. But Nick Chubb in at 12. He has an ADP right now, according to Fantasy Pros, at 17.2. So middle of the second round. I have Nick Chubb ranked at 12. Jake, you have him at 15. And Jeremy's the high man, having Nick Chubb at 9. Why so low on Nick Chubb this year, Jake?
Well, these are PPR rankings, and I think, I think ETN above Chubb that's pretty spicy. That's not something that is just chalk. But I think ETN has a lot of upside as a pass catcher, where Chubb, and you know what? If Hunt gets traded, then yeah, Chubb's going to move up in my rankings, and they might be without Deshaun Watson. But, I mean, Jacoby Brissett can hand the ball off just as good as any other quarterback I've seen in the NFL. So just have him hand it off to Chubb, and you can see a massive workload, whether that's the first 6 games, and their early schedule is very, very soft. Chubb could be like an early season. He's the RB1 through the first 3 or 4 games of the season if they just feed him against his soft schedule. But as for right now, you still have Hunt there. Again, you don't know if it's going to be Jacoby Brissett or is it going to be Deshaun Watson eventually. Just too much unknown, so that's why I have him lower. I also like Javonte Williams over him, Leonard Fournette. Those are the 3 guys right ahead of him are ETN, Williams, and Fournette for me. And all of those guys, I think, have the pass-catching skills in PPR, where I'd rather have those guys than Chubb.
Yeah, for sure. Jeremy, you're the high man on Chubb. He's a top 10 guy for you. What do you see differently from Jake?
I mean, not that I see anything too differently. I mean, I think we can all agree from outside of a fantasy perspective, Nick Chubb is one of the best running backs in the league. So talented. Yeah, he doesn't catch the ball quite as much. He might get more volume this year, and I've just always been a Nick Chubb fan. He just gets it done. He's dependable, and I'd rather trust a dependable guy in round 2 and solidify your running backs, and just I have no problem drafting Nick Chubb. Honestly, even in like the top of the second round if I have to. I'm just a big fan of him.
Yeah. I tend to lean with Jake on this one. I'm not a huge Nick Chubb fan at his AD. I wouldn't mind him if he were to fall to the end of the second, early third at that turn, but early round 2, I tend to prefer a running back or a wide receiver that is going to dominate the targets, or a running back who has a stronghold on their backfield. But we'll jump into our number 11 guy. Some controversy around this guy, as I am super high on him. He's moving up my rankings as the day go. Alvin Kamara comes in at number 11 for us with an ADP of 18.5. I'm the high man on Kamara. I have him at my RB8. Jake has him at RB11, and Jeremy's the low man at RB14. So all across the board, we have him, according to these rankings. The news of his suspension hearing, or his hearing getting pushed back, I think it was 2 months. And a lot of people are saying that it's just going to be an ongoing deal during the season, and it won't affect his playing status. He is a risk. I mean, that obviously could change at any day. He could be suspended for however many games at any point. But if he's not suspended, which I do not think he will be this year, I think he's going to pick up right where he left off and be a top 5 running back. And if you can get him at the middle of the second round, I feel like that's one of the best values in the draft going on right now. What do you guys think about Alvin Kamara and his ADP?
I mean, yeah, if he plays the whole season, he's an absolute steal. He's done it year in, year out. I'm just low on him because I didn't want to quite take the chance. I've seen, in recent memory, I remember Zeke a few years ago being planned to be suspended 6 games, and he was going around the 3rd round. And Melvin Gordon with his holdout, the Chargers, was still around there. And I just kind of slot Kamara in as my RB14. That's kind of where the 3rd round goes. And, if I take him in the top 2 rounds and he ends up being suspended, I feel like I'm pretty screwed. I don't want to lose my league with my 2nd round pick. But so that's just a little risk I'd rather not take and just take a more solidified guy. Who knows? No one knows the Kamara situation, and we'll just see how it pans out. But I'll stay away if I have some other good options.
For sure, that makes sense. Jake, you're right in the middle. What do you think about Kamara and his situation this year?
Yeah, I mean, Kamara, he's as talented as anyone on this list. He could be the RB1 if he plays 17 games, but with the unknowns, not knowing if he is going to be suspended, there's been talk of 6 games, but his court date has been pushed out. Honestly, I've taken a lot of him in best ball just because he's fallen. I mean, earlier in the year when the suspension seemed like a sure thing, he was really, really falling. And, you might miss 6 weeks, but then you get 10 weeks of the fantasy season anyways of RB1 production, catches as many passes as any running back, and is in a fun, exciting offense, or what should be a fun, exciting offense. We'll see with Sean Payton leaving. But I think Kamara could absolutely be a league winner where he's going. The fact that you can get this guy, late in the 2nd, early in the 3rd, depending on when he falls. So I like that. But again, you're taking on risk there. So it all just depends on what kind of build you have. Third round for me is a no-brainer. Late 2nd, might get a little squeamish about taking him there, but can't argue with the talent.
Yeah, for sure. I am willing to take that risk because if he were to play, that is a league winner. And I mean, you could lose. I mean, I don't think he'll be. I don't really see a scenario where he would be suspended for the entire season or majority of the season. The maximum I could see is maybe 6 games. Worst case scenario would be he plays the first half of the year and then the suspension comes in the second half where you lose him in the fantasy playoffs, maybe like a 6-game suspension in the second half of the year. That would be absolutely brutal. But if I had the first pick and I could start my draft off or first or second, start my draft off with Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey, and then Alvin Kamara falls to that 2-3 turn, and I pair him with Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, and then getting another solid receiver, or just tripling up on those strong running backs, maybe a Zeke Elliott or something. I feel like that would be a tremendous start to any draft. I'm willing to take that risk if I were to get that shot. But we'll move to our number 10 running back out of Green Bay, Aaron Jones, with an ADP of 20.2. So around the same area as Kamara, mid to late second round, early 3rd round. I have Aaron Jones as my RB11. Jeremy has him RB12, and Jake has him RB9. So right around the same area, and I feel like we all have the same idea of what we're going to expect from Aaron Jones, as the pass catchers there are very slim to none. Outside of the running backs, it doesn't seem like there's many proven offensive weapons there in Green Bay. So I really expect Aaron Jones to have a hold of the receptions out of the backfield and a good chunk of carries. So, do you guys agree? What do you guys expect out of Aaron Jones this year?
Yeah, I mean, we're all pretty similar. I think it's one we don't have to talk about too much because it's a pretty run heavy team. The biggest downside of him is just he's paired with AJ Dillon, who also runs and catches the ball, had over 1,000 yards last year. But I mean, there's still more than enough room for Aaron Jones, as we've seen for the past few years. He's a pretty dependable guy. I wouldn't have any problem drafting him.
Yeah, he's been terrific, especially in any kind of PPR format. The past 3 years, especially, I think he pretty much locked and loaded top 10 running back. He's ended up, I think, RB2 maybe in 2020, I think it was, or 2019, one of those years. But it's funny you mentioned that Aaron Jones, that offense is kind of bereft of weapons. There's nobody around there that catches passes. But Alvin Kamara, on the other hand, he does have a lot of weapons in that offense now. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. Does that mean that he gets scaled back a little bit? Just to talk back to Alvin Kamara for just a second. That they have Chris Olave, they have Jarvis Landry, who works in that short intermediate area where Kamara's been so successful. So that is one concern outside of the suspension with Kamara, I think, is how big of a piece of the pie does he get? But with Aaron Jones, yeah, without any of these weapons, there've been a number of people talk about his stats with and without Devontae Adams and how many passes he catches. And I think, yeah, it's easy to get excited about him, especially in a PPR league. I think 20 is a value, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like the only thing I'm worried about with Aaron Jones is one, like Jeremy said, A.J. Dillon being there and being that big, bulking, bruising back. He'll get almost every single one of the goal line carries, every single short yardage. I'd imagine when if they're up in the fourth quarter, I feel like A.J. Dillon would be the guy they go to run out that clock. I feel like they'd rotate, but I feel like majority of those, whether it be 70-30 split, I feel like a lot of those would go to A.J. Dillon. Aaron Jones will probably have almost all the receptions out of the backfield, but a little worried about the touchdown department from getting stolen by A.J. Dillon. And the injury bug has always been a little bit of an issue for Aaron Jones. He's missed a couple games, it seems like, every year, or he's always banged up or questionable in practice. Does any of that scare you off from taking Aaron Jones in the middle of the second round?
I mean, a little bit. I mean, every running back can be injury prone. Not the biggest Aaron Jones fan, but it's usually pretty dependable. And I mean, I'll take him. I'm not too worried about injuries, just because you've seen so many running backs go down. It's hard to just pick a few that haven't been injured because it might be their time.
Yeah, I mean, Jones is a little bit older, a little bit smaller, but I mean, you're talking about A.J. Dillon taking some of that work. That also means fewer hits for Aaron Jones. Maybe he gets a little bit of maybe he doesn't get injured because of that. Just talk about the last 3 years. So 2019 through 2021, he's played 14 games or more every season. He's had over 1,000 yards every season. He's had 47 or more receptions every season, 10 touchdowns every season. I mean, you talk about injury risk. Show me a running back, I'll show you an injury risk. These guys are getting hit. They're in multiple car collisions every Sunday. Something's going to happen to a few of them. But Aaron Jones, as far as his ceiling is, especially as a pass catcher, he's averaged over 16 points per game in half PPR over the last 3 seasons. I'm totally fine with that. Late in the second round, sign me up. And I like A.J. Dillon. You guys are talking about A.J. Dillon a lot, but neither of you had him top 24. I think if he is taking more work from him, and we are expecting to see more touchdowns, then he's one of my favorite dead zone running backs. And A.J. Dillon, if you are worried about that, I think that ought to push Dillon up your rankings, and he's someone to really target, especially if you go 0 RB or hero RB. Fantastic RB2 or flex play right there.
Yeah, for sure. I have A.J. Dillon just outside the top 24. I have him at 25 or 26. Him and Miles Sanders are interchangeable for me. I could see like a Damian Harris type season for A.J. Dillon coming up with just majority of his production coming from those rushing touchdowns. But we'll move on to our number 9 running back. I had just gotten Jeremy and I had our first draft this past weekend, and I had got my first share, first of many, I hope, of this running back this season. Number 9, we have Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back Leonard Obese Fournette. Fournette has an ADP right now of 23.5. So at the end of the second, early third round, was tremendous last season. Do you guys think he'll repeat, or do you think Rachaad White will eat into some of his work and maybe a little step off for playoff Lenny? What do you guys think?
I'm not really concerned about Rachaad White this year. Leonard Fournette's going to be one of those more dependable backs, kind of like we were just talking about with Aaron Jones. I can depend on him to get a decent amount of points, and he won't lose me any weeks. He's a good draft pick, but since you drafted him, I'm rooting on his downfall this year.
Moving down the ranks. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I am the low man on Fournette. I have him as RB12. Coop, you have him at 11, and Steven, you got him at 9. So we're all right in that same area. It is interesting to see he has a lower ADP than any of these guys we've talked about so far, which is interesting. And even one that's just outside, Javonte Williams, he has a lower ADP than him. So I think he can be a value there in the late second, early third. I'm only taking him in the third round, so I haven't gotten a lot of them. This is I focus on wide receiver usually in this second round, at least this year. I've done a lot of either zero RB or hero RB builds, and this is where I'm usually taking a wide receiver. So I usually don't end up with Fournette, but he's in a perfect situation. He had Brady targeted the hell out of him last year, and probably more of the same. Brady didn't all of a sudden become an amazing athlete, so he's going to be dumping it off. So Fournette has the PPR upside, but I do worry a little bit about Rachaad White, but not much. And we talk about injury risk. All these guys have injury risk, and Fournette is another one of those guys that has missed time. And we'll see. Hopefully the conditioning doesn't catch up with him.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure what you mean about Brady not showing he's an athlete. He's got 1,000 career rushing yards, and I think I saw
really
him having. I think I saw him run a 4.2 40, or maybe
I think Coop could beat him in Wii bowling though, or maybe even real bowling. I've seen Brady, Wii bowl before, and it wasn't like Coop.
Yeah, it was a funny story actually. I don't know how many years ago, but I was convinced that it was after I watched the Brady 6 documentary, and that classic picture of him at the combine with his shirt off, and then they showed some of his combine highlights of him running the 40 and the 3-cone drill, and I was like, man, I could definitely beat his 40 time. And then I went out there and then I ran like a 6.4 or something. I was like, that's why I play baseball. But
yeah.
Going into our
unathletic NFL player is still really, they should have like a regular person run it with. Well, they have Rich Eisen for that, I guess.
Yeah, I saw someone at Face Off. They said like, "Oh, what realistically would be your 40 time?" And I said, "Definitely slower than everyone expects." And I saw everyone saying, "Oh yeah, I think I can run like a 4.9 or a 4.7," and I'm just sitting there like, "No, you can't. You can't do that. If you could do that, I don't think you would be doing this."
If I went sub 6, I would make my whole year.
Exactly.
I'd feel good about myself if I get it under 6 seconds.
Yeah.
And I doubt I could.
One guy who we definitely know can get under sub 5 on his 40 time, our number 8 running back, DeAndre Swift for the Detroit Lions. By far the highest ADP so far at 14.7. So end of the first round, early second round. I have DeAndre Swift at 10. Jake, you have him at 8, and Jeremy has him at 7. So I'm the low man, but I still like Swift. I want to see it for an entire season before I completely buy in on him as a first round pick. I mean, he was great last year when he was on the field, but I mean, Jamal Williams had more rushing yards at the end of the season, and it's just I want to see it all together for DeAndre Swift. Um, Maybe I'm just a little too low and oblivious to him. What do you guys see on DeAndre Swift that I don't see?
I would love to start this one off. I mean, I have Swift at 7. However, I could definitely see him being a top 3 fantasy running back this year. I am very high on DeAndre Swift. I think the Lions can be kind of a sneaky offense, pretty decent offense. And so, I mean, if he can stay healthy and play the whole season, I mean, I could see him being the best fantasy player and being a league winner. I'm very high on Swift, and I want to get him in a few of my leagues. Dude's so good. His fantasy points per touch is one of the highest we've ever seen. And just if he's able to stay on the field and get more playing time, I think that the sky is the absolute limit for Swift.
Yeah, I agree with everything Coop was saying there. Just this guy was really, really good last year. Unfortunately, it was cut short through injuries. But it was kind of there were some encouraging games there when he got just a ton of carries. So it kind of depends on what we see. But with Swift, I like what Coop said about this offense being kind of sneaky and good. I know Stevens already proclaimed the Eagles as the best offensive line in football, but this offensive line is the next one, maybe. You know, it's
They're up
really
there.
good, and they're fairly young too, and it's exciting. And if you want to wait on Swift and say, well, maybe I'll draft him in the first next year. Let me tell you, if you draft him in the first next year, that's because he had a hell of a year this year, and I really like him at the turn, maybe just a little bit after anywhere in the second round. If he's still on the board, honestly, I'm probably taking him. And I said I normally lean towards wide receiver in that second round, but Swift is one of those guys that I don't even think about wide receiver. I see him, I'm snatching him up in the second round.
Yeah, for sure. I feel hesitant at the end of the first. I'm more convinced at the turn. But if he were to fall to me like in this past weekend, I was pick 7, so I was 18th in the second round. So if he were to fall to me there, I would trust your guys' judgment, and I would have snatched him up over a guy like Fournette that I did take. I think I would still take Alvin Kamara over him because I've seen Alvin Kamara do it, and I feel like they're very similar players. DeAndre Swift is the more exciting younger guy, but I've seen Kamara do it for an entire year, and I mean, I don't know. I just think Kamara has done it before. Less competition in the backfield. I think Jamal Williams can eat into the reception game from Swift. Um, that's just my opinion, but going into our number 7 ranked running back, we have Joe Mixon at ADP of 10. So our first official first round ADP. I have Joe Mixon at 7. Jeremy has him at 8, and Jake, you have him at 6. So we're all relatively similar on Mixon. Do you guys expect a repeat of last year from Mixon, or do you guys expect more or less from last year?
I mean, I personally have Swift over Mixon. Comparing those two, Mixon, I say, we hate to bring up the injury thing, but I've never been able to trust Joe Mixon. I trusted him for so many years and always let me down. And last year he finally, had a great season. Can he repeat it? I think he'll be pretty close. Maybe not quite as good. But if he can stay healthy, he'll be a top 10 running back, and he'll keep your team in contention for sure.
Yeah, I like Mixon just because of that offense. Again, excuse me, the offensive line is improved, and the weapons they have. They're never going to be stacking the box against Joe Mixon. So there's a lot to like there in terms of touchdown upside, and I do think he's going to repeat in terms of yards this year. I think the touchdown ceiling is as high as anybody just because of the offense he's in, and I think he's pretty much got that role, that starting workhorse role on lock. It's not like Samaje Perine is going to unseat him. It's not like I don't think Chris Evans is going to unseat him. Yeah, he'll come off on third downs every once in a while. Yeah, he'll give a series to, Perine might get a series or Evans might get a series. But when it comes down to it, I think Mixon's going to be their man, and he's going to be the guy on the field. If you want a piece of this Cincinnati offense, I really like Mixon. A lot of times will fall to that 12th pick. So if you're picking at the turn, if you want to go running back heavy and then just focus on other positions, you can get a guy like Mixon and then a guy like Swift, and that's a really potent combination to have in your starting running back slots.
Yeah, for sure. That upgraded offensive line, like you said, that bodes well for Mixon to repeat last year. The only thing hesitant about me for Mixon to play devil's advocate, I mean, I like him in the first round, in the first round, early second. If he falls, that's awesome. To play devil's advocate, do you guys think with the emergence of, late season, the offense went crazy with the passing attack. T. Higgins would go for 200 one week. Jamar would go for 200 the next. I could easily see them both having 1,200, 1,300 yards and both having double-digit touchdowns. And then they still have a great NFL slot receiver in Tyler Boyd, maybe not for fantasy, but he's a great NFL player. And they just added Hayden Hurst, friend of Face-Off. So their passing attack has grown even better, and it doesn't even I don't know how that's possible for that offense to get it better, but it looks like they have, even with Joe Burrow having more time to sit in the pocket and let those plays develop downfield. Do you think there's a chance that they go just even more pass heavy and they end up going to a 70-30 split pass to run? And how much do you think that would hurt Mixon if they were to go just an extremely pass heavy offense? What do you think, Jake?
I don't know that it would necessarily hurt him, even because he's going to be getting more targets too. If they're just going to be so pass heavy, he's going to be more than likely the running back in the game. And Joe Burrow, maybe he's tired of getting hit and taking all those sacks, and that's a great little outlet for him, is just having Joe Mixon there to catch these short dump offs. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. And if you're moving the ball down the field, you're getting close to the end zone. Plenty of times the coach just wants to say, "Hey, let's give it to our guy and have him run it in rather than put the ball in the air." And Malcolm Butler gets an interception, and the Patriots win the Super Bowl again. You get to make that choice as a coach. I think they're just going to give it to Mixon.
Yeah, sure. Jeremy, say you're on the clock at the 10 spot or the 11 spot or wherever. You have a choice between to start your team with Joe Mixon or his teammate Jamar Chase. Who would you start your team with at the end of the first?
Yeah, that's funny because we had a draft the other day and I was pick 11. Neither of them actually fell there. But if I had to pick between the two, I like taking running backs in the first round. I would take Mixon.
Yeah. Jake, what would you start your team off with right there?
Give me Chase there. I'd take Chase over Mixon just because I like a lot of these, later running backs. That's where I feel like I can find the value versus, maybe Chase is rookie year. It was it's going to be one of his best statistical years. That's possible, definitely. But it's possible that he has a sophomore slump. But it's also possible he gets a little bit better. This offensive line is a little bit better. Another year with Joe Burrow, another year of growing chemistry, knowing the playbook. Last offseason, they didn't really get to, he was dropping the ball and everyone was worried about him. I like chasing the upside with Jamar Chase. I do worry about T. Higgins being there. You mentioned Tyler Boyd, but those three wide receivers at the top, and you maybe even throw Stephon Diggs in there too, but Kupp, Jefferson, and Chase, for sure, I like over any of the running backs we've talked about so far.
Yeah, sure. All reports out of camp so far have been saying that Jamar Chase is literally unguardable. He's burning any single person they put on him. So I think I would also start my team off with Chase because of, like you said, I do like a lot of the RBs in the dead zone this season, unlike past seasons.
I don't blame you guys one bit.
Yeah, it's you can't really go wrong right there. They're first round picks for a reason. Coming in at number 6, we have a guy from Jeremy's team, Dalvin Cook. And Jeremy also took him in the draft where he was just talking about at 11.
That's good value.
Yeah, for
Traded
sure.
up to 9 to get him. Made a little pick trade.
I was thinking of taking him at 7. The guy we talk about next was the guy I took at 7. But Dalvin Cook, ADP of 7.5. I have Dalvin Cook at 6. So does Jeremy. And Jake, you have him at 5. New offense. There's been reports that they're going to pass, excuse my language, but a shit ton. Do you think that hurts his value, or do you think he gets a bump in the pass game, Jeremy?
I don't think that hurts his value at all. I'm very excited for this offense. I'll just say that. Very excited. I think it'll be pretty good. I'm pretty bullish on this team this year. And I'm a big fan of Dalvin Cook when he's healthy. I mean, he's just so good. He's so quick. It just doesn't even look real sometimes. I mean, he tends to be hurt a few games a year. You know, you might have to take that, try to get Madison if you do get him. But yeah, I mean, he'll catch the ball. I mean, he's open to catching the ball 5-6 times a game. If, we'll run screenplays for him, and, he'll be a dump off guy. And if they're throwing more, he'll catch more. And, he always scores a good amount of touchdowns.
Yeah, for sure. Jake, how do you feel about Dalvin Cook this year? You have him at 5.
Yeah, I really like him. Again, it's still not at my point where I'd take him over Jefferson, Kupp, or Chase, just because, again, we're talking about PPR league, and I do think you get more flexibility as you go if you take that wide receiver early on, especially if it's a 3 wide receiver league. But Dalvin Cook he's got same kind of upside as these other guys we've talked about, where he's in a great offense, and if they're passing more, I'm getting more excited because he's a guy that catches a ton of passes. I took a look at who gets the most touches, and he gets 30 or more touches in 17% of the games he's played, and he's played 41 games in the past 3 years. He did have some injury problems early on. He's not the biggest back, but at the same time, when he's on the field, he's going to get the ball. And maybe without Zimmer now moving over to McConnell, he doesn't get as many carries, but I could see him getting a lot more targets.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I do like Dalvin Cook this year. I was going to say something, but it slipped my mind. We'll
go
just
Vikings.
What's up?
I think you're going to say go Vikings.
Nah, you wish. You wish. Yeah. Moving on to number 5, the guy I did end up taking at pick 7 in our recent draft. Pittsburgh Steelers running back and sophomore year running back, Najee Harris. Najee Harris lit the world on fire as a rookie last year. Felt like he caught 100 passes a game because of Big Ben's noodle arm. Big Ben is now gone. Do you guys worry that he'll keep up the receptions, or do you think it'll fall off with the new quarterback? And do you think he'll live up to his high draft ADP?
I think he'll still get the receptions. I mean, I think it'll be a more pretty simplified offense with a rookie quarterback, likely at quarterback. We're not sure going into week 1. They're still keeping Trubisky and Rudolph all in play, as well as Pickett, obviously, for week 1 starter. I think all 3 of those quarterbacks are not that good, and they'll be looking to dump the ball off a lot. And I can guarantee you they're going to be handing the ball off to Najee Harris, as you said, and sorry for the language, a shit ton.
Well, I might use the word shit too, talking about the Steelers offense, but it won't be that way. I worry a little bit about Harris as far as like the consensus top 5 running backs. I think he's a pretty clear consensus top 5 guy for most people. He, I think, has the most bust potential just because and I think Mike Tomlin is probably the best coach in the NFL right now. Him and Bill Belichick, he's the only guy I'll put in that same tier. He's just been so great for so long for the Steelers. So they could have another very good year. Their offensive line is not very good. They're losing Big Ben, Big Ben couldn't throw the ball down the field, but he sure as hell couldn't throw it 5 yards to Najee Harris and let him run. With these new quarterbacks, unless it's Mason Rudolph, and that's the other thing that worries me. You're drafting the guy in the first round, Kenny Pickett. You pay Trubisky this money, and Mason Rudolph's the guy you want to go with. He's the best guy in camp, and I'm rooting for Trubisky and Pickett. I want to see them succeed, but I think Rudolph, being the least mobile out of those three, would probably be the best bet for Najee Harris, just in terms of just dumping it off. As far as Pickett and Trubisky go, they might take off instead of dump it off, which worries me. And again, it might be a bad offense. So Harris worries me for that reason, but you can't argue with the volume he's going to get. Mike Tomlin has a track record of just handing his lead back the ball, giving him plenty of targets. So the volume's the argument for Harris. I just worry about what kind of touches those will be and where they'll be at, how many touchdowns they'll have.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, volume is king in fantasy football, and Najee Harris will be the complete owner of that Seattle backfield. Like you said, Tomlin does love to use one running back and he be on the field 90-95% of the snaps. Like you said, I am worried about the offense. It is one of the worst offensive lines in football. Najee Harris wasn't the most efficient runner last year, and I blame that on the offensive line mostly. He needs those receptions, at least 80% of the receptions that he got last year to return on his value in the first round. And I think it's very doable. I mean, they got the receivers, but I mean, like you said, these quarterbacks aren't that great at getting the ball down the field. Yet to be seen what Pickett can do. But, I mean, checking it down is a rookie quarterback's best friend, tight ends and running backs. So I expect Najee Harris to have a good season this year for fantasy purposes, but I do not think that is a very good offense, as we have said. Coming into our top four, these are pretty unanimous top four for the most people. Number 4, we have Austin Eckler from the Chargers, ADP of 3.3. I have Eckler at 4. We all have Eckler at 4, so that works out pretty well. Do you guys see a repeat of last year, even with the receptions, to be that high, or do we expect a little bit dip back down to, a little bit more reality? He had an insane amount of receptions last year, and rushing touchdowns and receiving. I think he led the team, or was second on the team, his own team, in receiving touchdowns behind Mike Williams. I'll have to double check. But what do you guys see from Eckler this year?
One thing you could say with all those passing attempts from Justin Herbert, I think that offense is just electric. And they were in so many tight games last year. And with them boosting up the defense, people are expecting them to win, 12 games. And, if they're in the lead more often, Eckler may not get quite all those catches that he had last year. They drafted Isaiah Spiller, which might hurt a little bit, just running wise. But, we all have Eckler at 4 for a reason. He's been known to catch so many balls, score so many touchdowns, and just be pretty dependable when he's on the field.
Yeah, I think Marshall Faulk was the last running back to catch 8 receiving touchdowns, and now Eckler has also done it. He's done that twice, I believe. So he it's more than just he's falling into touchdowns. He's a really impressive football player, obviously, but that offense is really appealing. And for me, honestly, these top 4 even can be lumped into one tier because they all come with this insane 20+ touchdown upside, and they're all going to be going in the top half of your draft. I mean, every once in a while you get Eckler or Henry falling past 6 because some guys will want a wide receiver, but all of these guys in this top 4 really deserve to be here. And Eckler is really exciting in PPR, obviously, and that offense is exciting. And the play calling, how much they go for it on 4th downs. I've talked about this before, and how aggressive they are in the red zone really is one of the reasons that Eckler gets those touchdowns. So I'm all in.
Yeah, for sure. I just looked it up. Eckler had 8, like you said, 8 receiving touchdowns, and their wide receiver 1 was Keenan Allen, and he had 6. So that is a crazy stat. But yeah, Eckler had 20 total touchdowns. He had 12 on the ground, 8 through the air, which is ridiculous, which led him to be the RB2 overall behind Jonathan Taylor. Like Jeremy said, they drafted Isaiah Spiller in the later rounds. He went late. He fell down draft boards. I wonder what the reason was for. Maybe NFL teams didn't like him as much as I did. I think Spiller was the second best running back in the draft behind Breece Hall. I am a little bit worried for Eckler that he may lose maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns on the ground due to Spiller being a bigger, more bruising back than Eckler. Eckler's one of the smaller backs in the league. That could hurt his value a bit, but I don't think it will be that bad because, I mean, he makes up for it in the receiving game, like we said. I think he can still get those receiving touchdowns. Like Jeremy said, this offense is electric. They go for it on 4th downs. They're going to put points on the board. And in that division, I mean, it's going to be a shootout half their season is going to be a shootout playing in that division. So I feel like Austin Eckler is a very, very safe pick and definitely worthy of a top 5 pick in fantasy drafts this year. Our next running back coming in at number 3 was well on his way to be the number 1 back until he broke his foot. Tennessee Titans, the King, Derrick Henry at number 3. Are you guys worried about his foot injury, or do you guys think he's just King Henry? It doesn't matter. He's going to come out and dominate like he did last year. What do you guys think?
No, I wouldn't be too worried. King Derrick Henry. He's a freaking monster. I wouldn't be too worried about his foot. He's going to do what he usually does. He'll probably be a top 5 back again. So there's not much you can say. We've seen him do it for about 3 straight years, just pure absolute dominance.
Yeah, he's a freak of nature, and I do have similar concerns with him that I did with Najee. Obviously, he's not going to be catching all these passes like Najee Harris, although Derrick Henry did catch more passes last year before he got injured, so there's a little bit more upside, not much, but we're talking about a PPR league, every catch counts. But I do worry about that. Offensive line isn't great, and again, the offense in general. Ryan Tannehill, the last time he played, did not look great, and if that carries over this season, and they've just lost AJ Brown and Julio Jones they didn't get him for many games, but this offense seems worse on paper, and that worries me because we know that Derrick Henry is going to be the focal point of the offense, but how valuable is that position going to be? It being the focal point of the Tennessee Titans offense. It's tough to say. Maybe they just keep rolling and they have another great year, but the offensive line is not great, and he's another year older and is coming off that injury. I will say I'm not more worried about Derrick Henry than any of these guys, maybe with the exception of maybe Jonathan Taylor, who's obviously younger than any of these guys, younger than most of these guys we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Wait, you said you were more worried about him or less worried?
I'm more worried about Derrick Henry than Jonathan Taylor, but outside of him, anybody else, am I more worried about Derrick Henry getting injured than Dalvin Cook? No. Am I more worried about him than Austin Eckler? No. I am worried about the offense. If everyone's healthy, that offense, I don't think the Titans' offense is going to be better than the Chargers, which maybe is a reason to move Eckler ahead of him.
Yeah, it is going to be hard for that offense to sustain the record they had last year. It is hard to believe that they were the number 1 seed in the AFC last year. I feel like they were just such a boring team without Derrick Henry. They had no identity without him. So I truly don't understand how they were the number 1 seed. It blows my mind.
Makes no sense.
It really doesn't with teams like the Chiefs, the Bills. It really is crazy. But moving on to number 2, some say he's the best player to ever play fantasy. Christian McCaffrey is number 2. He has an ADP of 3.2. So the second highest ADP behind our number one guy. CMC has only played in, I think, 10 or 11 games in the past 2 seasons. But 2 seasons ago in 2019, he had a ridiculous season, and ridiculous is an understatement. He had 1,000 yards on the ground, 1,000 yards through the air, 80 plus catches, 20 something touchdowns. He was literally putting up video game numbers for fantasy football, but that is 2 years ago. But when he is on the field, he is still putting up video game numbers. What do you guys expect out of Christian McCaffrey? Is it going to be the same? Is it just going to be boom bust, come down to injury? What do you guys expect?
I mean, I'm so big on McCaffrey. I would take Taylor on just because it's safer. But man, I'm such a big McCaffrey fan. He's won me multiple championships. I'm looking at his stats right now from the last 2 years when he was hurt. 2020, the 3 games he played 3 games. In PPR, he scored 28, 25, and 37. And in 2021, he scored 27, 24, and then he got 15, 26, and 25. I mean, the dude is unbelievable. And, whoever plays quarterback, I can guarantee they're going to be dumping it off a ton to him. And I think he's going to be the best player in fantasy football this year. I would still take Taylor one because it's safer. But McCaffrey is like LaDainian Tomlinson-esque with fantasy football. When it comes to fantasy football, he's just unbelievable.
I'm glad you brought up LaDainian Tomlinson because when you said best fantasy running back of all time, you got me a little prickly here because he hasn't scored 31 touchdowns in one season last time I checked. And LaDainian Tomlinson was on another world. But yes, Christian McCaffrey, in a similar space, I would say, but maybe not. He doesn't have the crown yet. He has more upside than anybody we've talked about. Yeah, if you want to take a pick and swing for the fences, it's McCaffrey. Obviously we're grading these guys and kind of trying to bake in what's the offense going to look like, what's the risk of a serious injury, and you can't just sidestep that with McCaffrey. That's why he's going 2. That's why he's not going number 1, is because there is that significant risk for injury, and it worries me. That's your number 1 pick. I've taken Justin Jefferson ahead of him. I've taken Cooper Kupp ahead of him. And that might not be a popular pick, but at the same time, I'm trying to secure my investment. That first round pick, I want it to hit and not miss. And obviously, playing in a best ball tournament, you just playing for upside. McCaffrey's the way to go. And no one's been better on a per game basis than McCaffrey in the past 3-4 years. But I understand why he's at 2 and not number 1, even though we are all saying, well, he could easily be better than Jonathan Taylor. They both play 17 games. He's going to outscore him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, I agree with Jeremy and what you said, Jake. If health was not concerned, Christian McCaffrey would easily be the first pick. It wouldn't even be a debate. Jonathan Taylor, I agree, would be my pick at 101 because he is just a lot safer. He's basically a mix of Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey. If they had a baby, he would be the offspring, find right in the middle. He does the receiving work, not to the extent that McCaffrey does, and he runs the ball like Henry, like a bull, but not as crazy as Henry. He's healthier than both, I would say. So he's just the safer pick than McCaffrey. But if McCaffrey is able to stay healthy, I wouldn't be surprised if he outscores Jonathan Taylor by 100 points. That's the type of guy you can get with McCaffrey. McCaffrey's season 2 seasons ago, he did score 100 more points than Jonathan Taylor did last year. He scored 470 something points compared to Jonathan Taylor's 370. So that's the type of player you can get. You can get a borderline 500 point player, which is almost unheard of besides probably LaDainian Tomlinson. Those are probably the 2 guys who have ever come close to those numbers that aren't a quarterback. But the injuries are a very valid and a very big concern. I would go Jonathan Taylor 1, and then I agree with Jake. I think I would, if I'm the number 2 guy, I would have to play it safe, and I think I would take Cooper Kupp because mean, I don't think he'll repeat what he did last year, but I think he'll be 85, 90% of what he did last year. And that's still a very, very solid wide receiver one. And I feel like he's less of an injury risk than McCaffrey. But I mean, if he's healthy, it's not even a debate. He's the best. He's the best player, maybe in football. That's not a quarterback.
I do want to add real quick. You said he scored like 100 more points or whatever. That
Yeah.
was also in one less game because they just added the 18th week.
Yeah, that is true. That is
So it
true.
would have been like 135.
Yeah, if he had that extra game, maybe he would have hit 500.
500.
Yeah. Wow.
That's one of the things though about Jonathan Taylor. We all have him at number one, and we've all talked about it. It's that he seems really safe. He's young, he's big. He's not 205 pounds like McCaffrey. He's a big guy, and he's going to be getting a heavy workload for a run-first team with a great offensive line. Feels really, really safe. But at the same time, last season, he scored the fewest points by number one running back overall since Devonta Freeman. That year with the Falcons. And you think about that was a really down year for running backs. And after that, that's when we saw the zero RB craze kind of really take over. Because they said, well, look at this guy. He was the number one overall running back, and he went this late. So I would say, I could see Jonathan Taylor improving upon last season. I think he's got a better quarterback, probably a quarterback that's more likely to dump it off, a la Phillip Rivers did with him in his rookie year. I could see that happening with Matt Ryan, although it does sound like Nyheim Hines will get some work also. But yeah, McCaffrey he really, really scares me. I have some exposure in best ball because, again, as a tournament play, if there's that, I don't know, whatever it is, a 20% chance that he plays all 17 games this year, that there you go. You win your league. Congratulations.
Yeah, for sure. And as we have said already, Jonathan Taylor has come in at our number one spot, very unanimous, as he has a literal ADP of 1. So he's going first overall in just about every single league. Like you said, Jake, he has had the lowest scoring overall RB1 season since Devonta Freeman. I think that is a little bit of a misleading stat because I mean, Freeman, I would have to look up his stats again and how much he scored, but I understand that he wasn't one of the top RBs, but I think he is still one of, at the end of the last season, he was having MVP talks. Now, it wasn't super serious because everyone knows it's a quarterback award, but he was pushing 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns. He's an animal. He's a beast. He's going to have 1,600 yards and 13 or more touchdowns, barring injury. He's going to be an animal. I don't think Nyheim Hines will affect him nearly at all. Maybe he'll take away 10 receptions. But if you have a player like Jonathan Taylor, you put him on the field for as much snaps as you can put him out there because he can literally do it all. What do you guys think of Jonathan Taylor this season? Do you think he repeats almost all of what he did last year?
Yeah, we already pretty much hit on him a little bit. I see him doing pretty much what he did last year. Should be a little improved offense, I'd say. Not as many turnovers this year, hopefully. Yeah, I have no problem drafting Jonathan Taylor at 101. It's because he's, as we said, the most safe and can very well be the number one running back in fantasy this year.
Yeah, for sure.
He's that perfect mixture of high floor, high ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel like with a young guy, the way he's built, an injury is unlikely, and you're going to have the workload. And I don't mind Nyheim Hines. There's been a lot of talk that he's going to split out in the slot. He's going to, they might play on the field together. I think they both could be really good and both also play all 17 games, and especially in a PPR format. I'm not shying away from Hines in PPR especially. But with Jonathan Taylor, easy pick 101. Don't even think about it. If you're feeling, a little bit more, want a little more risk, a little more upside, yeah, you can go Christian McCaffrey. That's definitely not what I would do with the pick, because I think, Jonathan Taylor could play 17 games and not be the RB1. He could maybe land in RB2, RB3 area, and still improve on his season last year. We talked about how low scoring it was. He could still be better than last year and maybe not finish as RB1. But with a mixture of the high floor, high ceiling, love him as 101.
Yeah, for sure. That wraps up our RB rankings for this season in PPR scoring. Before we go, I want to touch on three running backs that I touched on in the last rankings, because one we're all super high on, and then two that are very controversial for this upcoming season. The first one we are all super, super high on is, Jeremy said it in our group chat, Travis Etienne. As a proud owner of Travis Etienne in Dynasty, he's like my son, even though he's older. I love him. He's going to be a beast this year with an ADP right now of, where is it? A 47.2, and that's right now. It is rising by the day. It's by the time late August comes around, I wouldn't be surprised if he's ADP around like 33, around where James Conner and Zeke are going. I would not be surprised at all. Why are we so bullish on Travis Etienne?
I would say every report coming out of camp is that he is the best offensive player from that team. Now, that's not saying a ton. They don't have the greatest players, but he's the star of camp, is what all the beat reporters in Jacksonville are saying. He's obviously amazing at Clemson, and he's hurt last year, so this is really his rookie year. But he already had the NFL experience of being around the team, being around facilities, being around practice, being around games for a whole year. His guidance is the limit for him, and he could be a top 10 back if it all said and done. The only thing is, how many touches is James Robinson going to have?
Yeah, for sure.
And until I see James Robinson on the field taking handoffs, actually playing, the sky's the limit for Etienne. I really liked him as a prospect. I actually had him ahead of Najee Harris as prospects in Dynasty. And obviously, after what Najee did in his first year, you can't really keep Etienne up ahead of him. But at the same time, I think he offers that kind of upside when you look at how many targets that Najee Harris had in his rookie season. I could see that kind of action for Travis Etienne, especially with Trevor Lawrence. They have that continuity, they have that chemistry from college, and they just paid Christian Kirk $20 million, however much money, to be their wide receiver one. You look at the pass catchers on there. Laviska Shenault really hasn't panned out. Marvin Jones kind of flashed last year, but he's Marvin Jones. And then they have Zay Jones. Travis Etienne, he's got as good at pass catching chops as almost anyone in this group. And you're worried about James Robinson, who just suffered an Achilles tear, which is not an easy injury to come back from. And they're saying positive reports about James Robinson, but Etienne, as far as PPR goes, he's got an immense ceiling. And if the Jaguars do turn things around, I don't have to tell guys from Philly that Doug Peterson is a better coach than Urban Meyer, right? So he's going, this team is going to be better, and they're going to be better because they add this piece, this weapon in Travis Etienne, and watch what he does this year. I think he's going to be great, and I think he's a value where he's going. Again, I think I like him better than Chubb in PPR.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with almost everything you say, Jake. Like you said, James Robinson, until he is on the field and outperforming Travis Etienne, it's Etienne's backfield, and Etienne has the draft capital over him. He's got the physical tools over him. Fits the scheme more than James Robinson does. He's got the connections with the quarterback and the coach already. it's just everything is lining up for ETN to have a monster season and James Robinson to be just a straight backup. I'm not worried about Robinson at all until I see it.
I don't think he's that good.
I don't either. I think he was literally just the only guy there, and that's all I think. Moving on to the other guy I want to talk about, a guy I'm not so bullish on, but Jeremy told me I think he likes him. What do you guys expect from Javonte Williams this year? Personally, I don't really like him at his ADP. He's going with an ADP right now of 20.2, so end of the second round, middle to the end of the second round. I kind of just expect another split with Melvin Gordon. There's been reports out of camp, some people saying it's a 70-30 split in favor of Javonte. Another person said it was a 50-50 split again. I mean, I personally expect it to be like a 60-40 split in Javonte's favor, but 60-40 split, and they're going to pass the ball more. I still think that's only going to be like 14, 15 carries a game for Javonte, and then the passing work, which is enough. But like, I don't know. I'm a little worried about it. What do you guys think?
Jake's right in the middle of us. I have him actually at RB10, you at 16, Jake at 13. So he's right smack in the middle. Javonte I will say he's a riskier pick than guys like Chubb, Fournette, Aaron Jones, because he's not going to get quite the volume. I think he's skill-wise going to be, no, not this year maybe, but next year, 2 years from now, we're going to be talking about him as the number one overall fantasy pick. I think he is that good. With Russell Wilson there, we'll see how the offense goes. It's a risky pick, I will say, but man, I mean, even if Gordon goes down, something like that, Javonte will automatically be a high-end RB1.
He's a mini beast mode. He really is. He's a mini beast mode.
He's so good.
What do you think, Jake?
I'm not really worried about any kind of risk. I'm not worried about Melvin Gordon. Is he going to get some carries and some touches and some targets? Yeah, but you look at the way that this Denver offense improved. Let's just start from square one. We think that Javonte is going to be the guy. I've been making a joke about Javonte being the best handcuff in football because he's Melvin Gordon's backup, but we all know that Javonte is going to be the starter. And on top of that, you have a new coaching staff that's more offensive minded, right? You don't have to worry about Vic Fangio anymore. You've got a new quarterback in Russell Wilson, so you would expect more opportunities to score there. And then we talked about this division a ton already, and it's going to be high scoring. So I really like Javonte. I usually get him in around that 2-3 turn, right between picks 22 and. You can sometimes get him in 25. If he ever reaches the third round for me, again, that's an easy pick because he has that type of upside that Jeremy talked about, where he could be the number one pick next year. You know what? If he gets that workload, he could be RB1 this year, easy.
Yeah, for sure. The last guy I wanted to talk about was a guy I am not touching in almost any draft because he will not fall to the spot where I would be comfortable with taking him. And that is Saquon Barkley. As you can see, I wrote Saquon Barkley and the New York nobodies. There's literally nobody in New York besides Barkley. Barkley is an insanely talented running back. If you were on a different team, it would be a different story. But there's Daniel Jones, horrible. Offensive line, improved, but still really bad. The wide receivers they're just mid. Tight end, horrible. They're just a horrible offense. I can't even remember who their head coach is. I feel like they just got a new one.
Ryan Dable came over from the Bills.
Yeah, he's their best thing they got going for him, and he has yet to show anything yet. But Saquon Barkley, I'm completely out on him at his ADP of 23.7. So end of the second round at that 2-3 turn. He's that with that line, I mean, it has improved, but he's shown that he's super inefficient. There's been multiple games like this year. I wouldn't be surprised in at least 3 games he plays. He's battling for that 1 yard per carry average. It's just I don't like the situation there, and I'm just completely out on Barkley as it is. What do you guys think about Saquon this year?
Jake, you got to start this one. You got him by far the highest.
So Barkley for me he's early second rounder. Honestly, that's where I'd like to take him. And it's very similar to this Christian McCaffrey discussion that we had earlier, where is there an injury risk? And honestly, I think McCaffrey probably carries more injury risk than Barkley at this point. You look at the last injury that he had; it was such a freak accident, just him rolling his ankle over a Cowboys defender after a play, just really gutted me as a Barkley fan. But he's got all the talent in the world. You might say he's the most talented running back in the NFL when he's right, and he's got the body type to sustain hits. And I'm excited about this new offense with Brian Daboll coming over from the Bills. I could see a lot of targets. Again, it's very similar to this situation. Obviously, McCaffrey has DJ Moore there, but you said it. There's nobody but Barkley. He's going to be getting the rock. They're going to be playing it's a pretty tough schedule between the Eagles and the Cowboys, both solid teams. But I could see them also having big games against Washington. Who I think their defense is going to struggle. It just seems like they're on a downslide here. But I'm excited for Barkley and the Giants, and I think he's one of these guys that's likely to drop because of those injuries, that still has the upside that he flashed as a rookie. Right, his rookie year is still his best season. He had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, and that could happen again. It's not like the Giants were really good that year, right? It's not like, oh man, So I think he could succeed even if the Giants aren't great. But it's all between getting Tony back, a new head coach, just drafted a great offensive tackle too. I think all signs are pointing up for the Giants. Maybe he gets a new quarterback next year. And I will say, last thing about Saquon Barkley, everyone was very excited about him coming into the league. Please remember this, Saquon Barkley, if he ends up fizzling out this season, remember that about Bijan Robinson when everyone's talking about how great he is. And we talked about it with all these guys. The injury risk for running backs it's ludicrous, and none of these guys, 17 games isn't guaranteed for anybody.
Yep. All right, Jake, I got one last question for you. Barkley, you said you'd take him at that one, or the turn at the 1 and 2 at the end of the first.
Early second round. I wouldn't take him at the turn, but early second round, yeah, like first 6 picks in the second round, yeah, I'd take him somewhere there.
All right, since I know you like to say you like the RB dead zone this year. Say you're on the clock, you take, I don't know, Jamar Chase first round. Say you're at like 10 spot. You take Jamar Chase first round. Second round, your two choices to go, you got either Saquon or CeeDee Lamb. Who are you going with?
It's a PPR league?
PPR league, yes.
3 wide receivers or 2?
We'll go 2.
I'd take Barkley.
You would take Barkley over
Pretty
Lamb?
Easily Barkley and a two wide receiver. And honestly, I think about it with Lamb.
Yeah.
I mean, Barkley's shown it.
Yeah.
Has Lamb shown it? I mean, has Lamb proven that pick, where he's going at the turn, basically late first, early second?
Yeah.
He's never put up those kind of numbers. And I'm a big fan of CeeDee Lamb. I think he's great, and I am drafting him there. But, I can't argue that he's proven it when Barkley has clearly shown that he can be one of the best running backs in the league.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, it's all remained to be seen. We'll see what happens this season. But that'll be all from us. Jake, Jeremy, anything you want to say to end it all?
I'm excited for the wide receiver rankings. I'll say that. I can't wait for our next show.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm
Jake?
ready. I'm ready to go.
Awesome. Yes. As Jeremy said, join us next time for our consensus wide receiver rankings. It'll be, at first, part 1 will be 24 through 13, and then the second part will be exactly what we did today, 12 through 1. This has been Ball Talk. Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a good one.
Thank you.